Mr. Sumani, like VAT, is there any input credit available on service tax?
Yes, on the service tax also input credit is available. But when you take, see, there are two schemes. I said you on the billing basis, if I am right.
Right.
What happens? A small service provider, like a manpower agency providing services, there is a various percentage prescribed by the government. Like service provider will pay 25%, service recipient will pay 75%, or service provider will pay 40%, service recipient will pay 60%. Based on the product, there are various percentages provided.
Okay.
But when you are availing abatement, sometimes service provider did not pay anything, only the service receiver has to pay 40%.
Okay.
How do you take the input credit? If I say day of the billing, for example, today is October 7th, I pay on day of the billing on November. But the question here is, think that service receiver has to pay the balance amount, correct?
Right.
Then only he can take the input credit.
Correct.
So, 25% whatever the service provider has paid the service tax, he can claim exemption to that level as an input credit on the next month.
Okay.
The balance of the input credit can be claimed only after he discharges his liability of 75% or 60% to the government. Immediately after the discharge of the liability, he can claim.
Okay.
So, it becomes a combination of a billing as well as payment.
Okay.
For a service recipient.
Okay.
Service recipient. Then you may ask one typical question which all people are getting confused nowadays. When you are availing a unregistered person like a security service provider or a manpower agency which are proprietary units who are not registered under service tax because they have an exemption limit of 10 lakh rupees.
Right.
They did not require under the Act to register. I am availing the services from these people. Whether service provider should charge any tax.
Right.
Service provider did not charge any tax. He can invoice as usual 0% to the service recipient. Service recipient will pay the tax only on 75% of the bill, not on the full bill. 75% of the bill service tax, as usual. That means government cannot get the revenue on the 25% because it is an exempted revenue.
Okay.
He is below 10 lakhs, so he did not pay.
Okay.
Government cannot exercise that clause of payment because he is a small service provider, below 10 lakhs.
Okay.
And service recipient, as the law classifies very clearly, he has to pay on the 75%. This is called reverse tax mechanism under the service tax.
So it is applicable for all services or only some services?
It is almost applicable for a services which service recipient avails from the unregistered class of service providers or proprietary units which are exempted from service tax registrations.
Okay. So the government does not lose 100% revenue, it's only 25%.
See, the reason given behind a small recipient cannot pay the tax on the billing because the service recipient pays after 90 days.
Right.
Service provider, if you insist him on the day of the billing to pay, he has to pay on the 100% of the bill, which will be very cumbersome for the small service provider.
Right.
Second is, a small service provider who is not required to register under the Act, why should he be penalized?
Right.
But the question here is, the work of the service recipient, a corporate, is increasing. He needs to maintain the records of both what he availed from the person who is not required to be registered, what he availed from the person who is required to be registered, and take the input credit only after payment.
Okay.
Government makes its revenue very, very clear in this part of the things.
Right.
Like you may ask, is the export services exempt from the service tax?
Right.
Yes, 100% export service is exempt from the service tax.
Right.
When you are exporting a service from an Indian soil to a foreign country, and if that service utilized in the foreign country, not in India, that means the service provided by you should not have been utilized in India.
Okay.
Then it is called export service.
Okay.
Yeah, as an export service provider, you are eligible for service tax refund.
Okay.
You can claim it refund once you are registered under the Service Tax Act.
Okay.
But when you are under the composition or abatement scheme, can the service recipient claim input credit? If you ask me, only to the tune of the percentage he is paying, you can claim.
Okay.
Not on the entire abatement.
Okay.
That means when you are exporting a service, you can claim to the tune of the service tax you have paid to the other people, which is not under the schemes.
Okay.
This is very, very clear. The place of service is little bit confusing. We need to talk on this with the various service tax authorities, because now when the place of service, when a person sitting in abroad and he is doing a service for India, you may ask, is it taxable in India?
Right.
For example, you have hired a foreign consultant to deliver services of training to your people who are in your factory.
Right.
Is service tax applicable? Yes. Under the new regime, it is applicable because services are used in India.
Okay.
Qualify. And even though service person recipient states, but the law does not state him to register under the service tax.
Right.
He is exempt from the registration because he is not a person who is in India doing business in India.
Right.
He is sitting in overseas country where you cannot register a overseas office as an Indian place of business.
Right.
So law exempts him from the registration, but law makes you to pay the service tax on these bills as per the scheme made.
Okay.
Like you have to pay your portion and take the input credit again.
Okay.
So service recipient obligation increases by availing such services. He needs to pay service tax on that.
Okay.
One more question a lot of my industry friends are asking me. When a foreign consultant comes to India, he sits in your Indian office and he does a service for your any computers, maintenance, or for example teaching or coaching your people or training your people.
Right.
Is service tax applicable on this?
Right.
The very good answer is it's applicable. Why? Because whether he sits abroad or in India, it doesn't make him mandatory for the registration because he doesn't have office in India. But he is doing a service in India. So service recipient has to pay the service tax on these services.
Okay.
He should take this as his additional liability,
Okay.
which is not exempted liability.
Okay.
The exemptions are only very few, like if you do a service to United Nations or some UNESCO child agencies or something which is notified by the government, UNO or something like that.
Okay.
Otherwise, you need to pay service tax on all services. There is no question of exemptions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Surmani. That's very, very informative.
Thank you.